50 Game of Thrones Secrets Only True Fans Know Part 2, 40. Catelyn Stark survives her death in the books. In the novels by George R.R. Martin, the Red Wedding occurs in much the same way we see on screen. Robb and Catelyn are betrayed and murdered by their allies, and House Stark takes a major tumble. After having her throat cut, Catelyn's naked body is dumped in the river, a final insult to the House Tully funeral rites which normally entail the body being placed in a boat, and floated down river. While on screen we never see Catelyn post-Red Wedding, in the novels her body is recognized by Arya's direwolf Nymeria, and removed from the river. Catelyn's body is found by Beric Dondarrion, leader of the Brotherhood without banners. Beric, being reanimated from the dead several times, passes his life force onto Catelyn. All is not sunshine and rainbows however, as due to the amount of time that has passed since her reanimation, and the painful manner of her death, Catelyn comes back twisted and intent on revenge. Taking the moniker Lady Stoneheart, Catelyn seizes control of the Brotherhood without banners and immediately embarks on a vengeance-centric guerrilla war in the Riverlands. Lady Stoneheart hangs any member of houses Lannister or Frey that she can get her hands on, and shows little of the empathy she displayed in her previous life. Be careful what you wish for. 39. The First Men, the Andals, and the Rhoynar. Every time a king or queen is introduced, we hear these titles rattled off: King of the Andals and the First Men, and in the books, we get the title King of the Rhoynar. But what do they all mean? And how can one person be king of all three? The First Men, well, they were the first men to enter Westeros via a land bridge that once connected Dorne and Essos. After coming into conflict with the Children of the Forest, the two sides settle their differences before living in peace. The First Men eventually take up worship of the old gods, the gods pf the trees, just as the children did. That is until the Andals show up. The Andals are the second major group to enter Westeros from Essos, and bring with them iron weapons, knighthood, and the worship of the Seven. The Andals come into conflict with the First Men naturally, and are largely successful in subjugating their technologically inferior opponents. The two races were alone in Westeros for thousands of years, until the Rhoynar, a river nation from Essos fleeing the Valyrian Empire, settled in Dorne. There they intermarried with the Dornish, but brought with them their equal primogeniture, meaning the eldest child, regardless of sex, was considered head of the family. After hundreds of years, the three races have largely intermingled, though the king or queen of Westeros still takes the traditional titles. 38. Jon Snow's death is different in the novels. At the conclusion of Season 5, we see Jon Snow betrayed and murdered by his brothers of the Night's Watch. Left to bleed out in the snow, we raged and screamed at our TVs for the injustice done to our hero, who was only attempting to do what he believed was right. In the novels however, it's a vastly different set of events that lead to Jon Snow's very justified death. Hold up, you say, Jon's death at the hands of the Night's Watch is justified? Indeed. In the novels, Jon's tenure as Lord Commander is much the same, in that many of his policies towards the wildlings and Stannis Baratheon remain. What changes, is the reason the Night's Watch eventually kills their second Lord Commander in as many months. In the novels, Jon receives the threatening letter from Ramsay Bolton before his death. Jon decides to gather an army of wildlings and ride south against Ramsay, an act expressly forbidden by the Night's Watch oath. This proves to be the reason the Night's Watch murders Jon, not just their disapproval of the favor shown to the wildlings. Jon is murdered for breaking his oath, not for being a good guy to the homeless. It's a powerful, but subtle change from the novels. 37. Tyrion's first wife was not a prostitute. Speaking of subtle, but powerful changes from the novels, turns out one of Tyrion's primary formative experiences was not the lie he believed it to be. As Tyrion relayed to Shae and Bronn in Season 1, Tyrion was married at a young age to a woman he met while riding with Jaime. The brothers came upon the woman being accosted by a group of bandits, and after Jaime drove them off, Tyrion took the woman to an inn. There Tyrion and the farmer's daughter, Tasha, shared a bed, and by the morning, Tyrion was in love. Hastily getting married by bribing a drunken septon, Tyrion believed himself to be a happily married man. Once word reached Tywin that his son had married a farmer's daughter, someone too low-born for a Lannister, Tywin had the woman raped by his guards and sent away. Jaime would later tell Tyrion that the woman was a prostitute, arranged to take his virginity. It's a fact that Tyrion believes on the show, but in the novels we learn otherwise. In the novels, Tywin coerces Jaime to lie to Tyrion about Tasha, and tell Tyrion that she is a prostitute. Jaime eventually confesses to Tyrion, causing a rift between the brothers that we don't see on screen. 36. All of the Stark children can warg. It might appear as if Bran Stark is the only one able to warg into his direwolf, Summer, but that's simply not the case. In the novels by George R.R. Martin, all of the Stark children have shown the ability to warg into their direwolves, even if they haven't actually done so. Bran Stark has shown the strongest ability thus far in regards to warging, most notably the ability to warg into a human mind, even one as shattered as Hodor's. Within the novels, both Arya and Jon Snow have also been able to warg into the bodies of their direwolves, Nymeria and Ghost, while sleeping. This was the same way Bran initially began to discover his own ability to warg into his direwolf, Summer. Rickon and Robb Stark were never shown outright to have the ability to warg, although their direwolves Shaydog and Grey Wind, both took on the personality of their owners to an extent beyond the normal master-pet relationship. And although Sansa's ability to warg is not definitive, most assume that the other children's ability to warg implies Sansa's ability as well. Had Lady not been executed in Nymeria's place, we would have perhaps gotten a glimpse of this. 35. Warging and greensight are two different things. This terminology often gets mixed up, because we see Bran Stark using both of these abilities, sometimes one right after the other. Superman can fly, and has incredible strength, but they aren't the same ability, are they? Bran has two unique and powerful abilities, but the abilities are not tied to one another. Greensight is a sort of prophetic dreaming, allowing the dreamer to experience the future. The dreams are often not literal glimpses of events to come, but rather symbolic representations of the future. Greensight is found in the Children of the Forest, houses that descended from the first men, and lastly in the Crannogmen. Jojen Reed, Bran's guide in seasons 3 and 4, was a Crannogman, a smaller people who live in the swamps around Moat Cailin. Wargs on the other hand have the ability to enter into the minds of animals, controlling their bodies in any way they see fit. So while Bran and Jojen both had greensight, only Bran was a warg, Jojen did not share that ability. Extremely powerful wargs, like Bran, are also able to enter into the minds of people, controlling them in the same way they do animals. Wargs can trace their descent to the first men, and wildlings have shown the ability as well. 34. Sir Duncan the Tall. Most assume that the only thing George R.R. Martin has written are the 5 Noels of the main series, those that comprise the Song of Ice and Fire that HBO has adapted into the Game of Thrones television series. And what do they say about Assumption? As it were, Martin has also written a prequel series pertaining to the adventures of the Wandering Knight, and a Prince of House Targaryen set 100 years before the events of Game of Thrones. The knight, Sir Duncan the Tall, takes Prince Aegon Targaryen as his squire, and the duo set off across Westeros. Their adventures are on a much smaller scale compared to the events of Thrones, but they do have consequences on characters we know farther down the line. They even meet some of the characters we know, such as the Three-Eyed Raven, long before the latter is exiled to the Wall. 33. Brienne of Tarth is descended from Duncan the Tall. As we detailed in the previous slide, Sir Duncan the Tall was a wandering knight in Westeros, one that made it from one end of the Seven Kingdoms to the other. Sir Duncan's potential family ties to Brienne of Tarth had long been suspected by fans, and Martin himself confirmed the theory at the 2016 Balticon. Fans had noted the similar height of both Sir Duncan and Brienne, along with possessing similar personality traits such as being stubbornly loyal. Additionally, in A Feast for Crows, Brienne requests to have her shield repainted with a pattern she remembered seeing in her castle's armory as a child. That pattern is an exact match for the pattern Sir Duncan carried on his own shield decades before. What a coincidence! Sir Duncan eventually rose to be a member of the Kingsguard, much as Brienne always dreamt of being. Again, what a coincidence! Brienne's ancestry, and the hints Martin dropped throughout his novels, should give you an idea of the sheer amount of detail that you are missing out on by not reading the books. Dive in, and prepare to spend hours upon hours reading theories afterwards. 32. Tommen died twice. Tommen Baratheon, first of his name, famously took a swan dive out of the top of the Red Keep moments watching his in-laws go up in flames in the Season 6 finale. Thanks to the actions of world's worst helicopter, Tommen could no longer take living, and out that window he went. What most people don't realize though, is that it wasn't the first time actor Dean Charles Chapman, who plays Tommen, had perished on Game of Thrones. It was even the first time he died as a Lannister. Chapman had previously portrayed Martin Lannister, Tommen's first cousin, in Season 3. Martin Lannister was captured by Edmure Tully, and held captive by the Starks. That is until Martin is murdered by Rickard Cartrick, one of Robb Stark's bannermen. Chapman believed that after his first death, his time on the show was over. When producers decided to recast Tommen for Season 4, deciding that a more experienced actor than the original Tommen, Chapman got the call. 31. Dance of the Dragons. This is a Targaryen civil war so awesome, that we sometimes wonder why we are watching Game of Thrones and not this. Shireen Baratheon heartbreakingly mentioned the dance before her father Stannis burnt her at the stake, and it's a story full with as much lust, betrayal, and dragons to keep anyone happy. The dance's origins lay in the succession for the Iron Throne. Upon the death of the current Targaryen king, that question came into violent focus. The king had named his daughter Rhaenyra his successor, but as the Seven Kingdoms had never had a female ruler, many preferred her half-brother Aegon II. Who should sit upon the Iron Throne, would force the Seven Kingdoms to pick sides, and the battle lines were drawn before the king's body was even cold. So began the dance. Before the civil war was over, dozens of dragons would lie dead, half the Seven Kingdoms would bathe in dragon fire, and House Targaryen's numbers would be decimated. It was an event from which the Targaryens never truly recovered, and had all the twists and turns that we are accustomed to from Game of Thrones. Except with gaggles, and gaggles of dragons. And who doesn't like that?